Hi, this is Rabbi Rami Goldberg, and welcome to Biblical Money, powered by Israel 365, where we take a deep dive into how people of faith enhance their business by staying true to their biblical principles. We interview leading CEOs, executives, and entrepreneurs to capture their wisdom to help us live our most fulfilled and faithful lives. Please like and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date and informed. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Biblical Money. I'm your host, Rabbi Rami Goldberg. Thank you for joining me. And today we have the distinct pleasure to be down in Texas once again. We've had so many wonderful people, so many friends who are down in Texas. We have our friend Jimmy McClintock, who shares a heart for Israel, for the Jewish people, for Bible, and we're going to get into getting into all that. So Jimmy, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Rabbi Rami, for inviting me. I appreciate it very much.
So, Jimmy, I'd love to take a step back. Give us a little bit about your history. I want to start on the financial side. What kind of businesses? I know that you were an entrepreneur. You've done a whole bunch of different things. I'm sure your teacher said you had ants in your pants when you were a kid and you were always needed to do something. So I'd love to hear, kind of the progression of how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, well, my origins, my grandfather was an entrepreneur. My father's uncle, my grandfather's brother, was also. And I grew up around that environment, especially during the summers. I would go and work for my grandfather. He had grocery store, meat market, fruits and vegetables. Back in the day, I'm a little older than you, so back in the day it was a little bit different. Kind of like the Macolet in town there. It kind of has a little bit of everything. But I grew up with that. My father, for some reason, I never asked him the question, but he kind of revolted against the whole idea. And he just decided he was going to work, be a worker and have a profession and do that, which is great also. Everybody gets to choose. But I enjoyed that mindset of doing what I want to. And that's kind of the ants in the pants thing. You want to do things your ways. I grew up in the 60s, and so you can imagine there was a few things going on then that kind of tweaked our brains a little bit and made us think differently. As a young person, I tell you a little bit about how I came in before the financial, maybe a little bit with my contact with Israel. At 17, I had an episode in my life, and I decided at that time I didn't grow up with any religious orientation. And so I had an episode where I said, you know what? I want to study the Bible. I want to make that my life. My goal is to be a student and a teacher and that. So I started down that road, but within a couple of years, when I was 19 years old, I heard a gentleman from Israel come and talk about his life during the Holocaust and his time spent in labor camps in Bulgaria. Really intrigued me. And so I wrote him a letter and asked if I could come to Israel and meet him and help him, whatever. I was naive. I still consider myself pretty naive in a lot of ways, but I got an answer back that said yes. So at 20 years old, I moved to Israel for the first time. And so I hadn't really started a career of any kind. I was a junior in college, and here I was in Israel, and it changed my whole perspective on life. Everything I understood immediately changed. So in the next short time, I got married, and Hava and I, my wife's name is Hava, we moved back to the States. And at that point, we come back, we have nothing. We have no money. I'd spent all my money on airplane tickets getting back home at 20 years old. And so I went out and got a job. And I realized at that point, I said, it's a good thing. You got to buy groceries, you got to pay rent. A job is a good thing. But again, it doesn't fit my personality because I get bored. I need to do something a little bit different all the time. So we moved back and forth in our early life together, back and forth. It would be a year in America, a year in Israel, 2 years in America, a year in Israel, 3 years in America, 3 years in Israel. And we jumped around a lot. But what I first started when I was about 24, I started my first company, and it was a furniture manufacturing company. I got the idea, and this is the way my life has always worked, Rami. I get these inspirations that some idea comes to me, or I see something and I say, you know what, that will work for me personally. And so we started a furniture manufacturing company. It went great.
What did you know about furniture manufacturing?
Nothing.
How did you even know?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I had a friend, though. He was good. He took a wood shop in school. And so he said, listen, I had the little money saved up. He had the wood shop in school. We saw something that seemed to be a hot item at the time. And we said, yeah, we'll start making furniture. So we did. And thank God it took off and it was working well. But then we decided to move back to Israel. So, of course, I walked away from that and moved back to Israel. Did the same thing. Of course, it led me in Israel. I ended up working in a furniture manufacturing company, and it helped me to rise very quickly in the company. I did well. And so then we moved back to America. And then the next thing I got into was construction. And that's really been the main thing of my life is construction. And, you know, I know your program is about faith and the Bible and how it all works in life. And I'm probably a little bit different than most of your guests because I didn't take the traditional business route and say, well, I want to build a business, a big business, a small business, any kind of business. I just had this prayer even before I met Hava and got married. I told God, I said, listen, God, because I had enough run-ins with business and the politics of business and the nastiness of business. And I told God, I said, listen, all I want a beautiful family and to live a happy life. I'm not looking for grandiose ideas. That's what I want. So that's really been my goal is to do things that I could do personally. And construction really, really fit into that niche for me. So I began into construction. You asked, well, what do you know about construction? Absolutely nothing. But, you know, there's a famous deal with Israelis that I always joke about. You know, I have a friend that he was living in Dallas area and decided to move back to Beverly Hills where his family's at. He was in the clothing business. And he said, I moved back. I said, what are you going to do? A couple of months later, he tells me, I'm going into the air conditioning business. I said, Eric, what do you know about air conditioning? He says, nothing. But I'm hiring somebody that knows something about it. Today, he's doing a few $1 million a year, having a great life. Right now, he's in Brazil and Argentina, enjoying himself. But it's that spirit, you know, when you believe that God is on your side and you live your life according to the principles of the Bible. In other words, you're going to work hard. You're going to work smart. You're going to treat people fairly. You're going to treat your employees fairly. You're going to live up to everything you tell people. I mean, when you make those your principles and criteria, the rest of it I leave in God's hands. You know, people have asked, well, I mean, COVID, honest to goodness, I have 2 construction projects I put on hold in COVID, 2 small office buildings I'm building here in Rockwall. I put them on hold because everything was out of sync. You know, the financing was terrible. The supply chain was horrible. And I asked myself, I said, well, what am I going to do? I mean, if I'm not a government worker or a worker with a pension, if I don't work, I don't make money. And I'll honest before heaven, the last 5 years have been some of the best financial years of my life. Haven't been the best, but they've been some of the best. And if you ask me how did it happen, there's no explanation. It just, God sent some idea, sent some investment opportunity, sent something, and it worked. And, you know, I think about, I always look and, you know how that we, on Shabbat, when we have the prayer service, twice on Shabbat, we say, Potech et Yadecha, umasbiach lekol hayratzon, that we believe every day God opens his hands and he distributes to every creature, not just human beings, but every creature, everything they need. Well, it applies to me too. You know, he's looking out for me. I have my part to play. And so I've been in construction most of these years, off and on when we were in Israel, not in Israel. I did build some properties in Israel. So that's kind of what I do. My son loves it because my son has chosen his life to work with his father, which thank God I'm appreciative of that. And we have that. So construction is kind of my main love to do. We also have a nutritional supplement company that we started about 30 years ago almost. And my son really runs that on the day-to-day section. We do homeopathic products. But that's kind of the way my life has worked. I'll look at an idea, you know, you driving down the road and you see a piece of property for sale and you think, you know, that'd be a good piece of property. So you buy it and you either build something or you sell it and you make some money and you go on to the next project. And so it's a little untraditional. So it's not like a company where you have employees working and the money's coming and going. It's kind of like a day by day adventure.
Yeah, no, it's amazing, and sometimes what happens is it takes the kind of the crazy person to see those opportunities that are out there. You know that if you take a look by the splitting of the Red Sea, and there was Nachshon ben Aminadav, one of the who was told who just went in first, and he went in up to his neck, and everyone's like, "Where are you going? What are you doing?" He's like, "No." Meaning Moses, God said, go, just, you know, kind of walk. And then those opportunities open up. All of a sudden it's there. But all too often, the rest of us get stuck where it's like, well, I can't walk forward because there's not a clear path and there's not a boundary and there's not a boat that's there that's going to sail us across. But it takes that, like, okay, yeah, well, we'll see what happens, and you know, and smart enough to figure out, okay, when to buy and when to sell. That's also, and I think that's more mazal, which is more you know, the grace of God than it is smarts.
Oh, absolutely. I you know, I do consider myself half smart, but genius, I'm not. But, you know, one other thing, you know, in talking about faith, you know, the opposite of faith is disbelief or doubt. And that's really our biggest enemy, or it is for me. It is for anybody, I assume. You know, we try to believe God. We try to live by faith, but we do doubt. We have those concerns. And like you say, when you're up to your neck, you're thinking, okay, there's not much future if I keep going. But the one thing to remember is there is absolutely no future in the past. You know, you can't go back to the past, and we have to, you know, we have to move forward, and we have to just trust God. And you know, it sounds simple, but I know it's challenging for people. And one thing that I think I would love to tell your audiences is if there's some just working people out there. I lived for a good part of my younger life kind of limiting myself. You know, in America, you have this idea, you know, you get out of school, you go get a job. If you get this education, you can make this much money. If you get that education, you can make more money. You kind of always put a price tag on your value. You know, what value do I bring to an organization? And that's limiting. That's very limiting. I remember I had my own business, but I also was working for a nonprofit organization in the administration, running the business actually. And I decided I was done with it. So I took off, and for a year, we just built a new home, and I went out and I would look over the lake. We live at the lake. I'd look over the lake and say, you know, what am I going to do with my life, God? I mean, what am I going to do here? I was listening to a news schedule. This was back in the mid 90s, like 95. I heard him on the radio say, was his name Michael Eisenberg, the head of Disney at that time.
Oh, Michael Eisenberg. Yeah.
Yeah, Michael Eisenberg. And they said, Michael Eisenberg, his salary this year at Disney was $250 million. And I thought to myself, I said, wait a minute. And as I said, I think I'm half intelligent, but I can't imagine what a single human being could do that has a value of $250 million in 12 months. And then that little voice spoke to me and said, in your world. And I thought to myself, you know what? That's true. In Michael Eisenberg's world, $250 million was a salary. That wasn't including his bonuses and pension. And it was his salary, for God's sake. I'm thinking, well, what do I put on myself? And I realized I had limited that. Within the next 2 months, a friend of mine who was an animal of a salesperson. I mean, he just could, he was great. He talked to me about something, and I don't consider myself a salesperson at all. But I said, you know what? This makes sense to me. This whole system, the product makes sense. I did it. I know you'd believe, but in the next 15 months, I made more than I'd made my entire life in 15 months. I also paid way too much of it to the government, but I wasn't savvy. I said, I made the money. You say I owe it. Here it is. And done it. But I'm saying that so there's, we can't limit ourselves. I mean, we believe in the God who created the whole universe. What does he say? The cattle on the hills, on the 1,000 hills, everything belongs to me. If he wants to bless us, I love the text in Genesis 12, I believe, 25, where Isaac, it says there's a famine in the land. But Isaac sowed, and in the year that there was famine, he reaped 100-fold. Now people would say, well, you can't do that in the famine. Well, you can't naturally do it, but with God's help, you can do it. And the first thing is Isaac didn't do it. If God hasn't, we can work and sow and till and everything, but if God doesn't grow it, it's finished. We don't have a chance. So I tried to stay, I tell people I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up, because I try to keep that young mentality of trusting in God like a person who doesn't have any better sense. And I just trust in him, and it seems to work fine. It's worked out so far, so good.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, one story that I love to tell that I heard from my rabbi, that there was once a certain poor man who came to Baron Rothschild, and Baron Rothschild was collecting money, and he was in a good mood that particular day, and he turned to this poor man and he says, Mr. So-and-so, if you had all of my money, what would you do? And without batting an eye, the poor man turned to Mr. Rothschild and said, Mr. Rothschild, if I had your money, you think I would walk from house to house collecting money? I would hire a horse and carriage. Meaning the poor man's mentality is poverty. Yeah. He cannot understand what it means to go beyond. And I think that's exactly what you're saying, is that like sometimes we have these limiting beliefs. Well, if only I can do X, then Y will happen. And that just doesn't need to be the world that God works in.
No, you're right. And I think today for the young people, I mean, what I love about today's environment is I wished I was just a little bit younger, because this tech world is so fascinating. And the things that you can do, the market, I mean, the whole world is a market. I mean, there's just so many opportunities out there, but you just have to suck it up and say, I'm going to try it. I mean, look at what you're doing, you and Israel 365, and you guys had a vision. You had something come over you and say, there's nothing here, but we're going to build something. And that's the spirit. We have to have that.
Yeah, it is amazing, because Rabbi Tully and I Rabbi Tully, the founder of Israel 365, we pray in the same synagogue. And, he came and he started talking about how he's doing stuff with Jews and Christians together. And everyone, I mean, myself included, was like, Rabbi Tully, you're nuts. This is not going to go anywhere. And meanwhile, at this point, we can brag the largest pro-Israel list of Jews and Christians. I mean, it's really just amazing the work that the organization. I mean, I started much more recently, but I mean, these are amazing things that when you have a limiting belief, they just don't happen, because yes, the only thing that I can be is what I studied in school, or but yeah, it's truly amazing. You've been so blessed. What are some of the things that you like to really sink your teeth into and get involved with outside of business? And I always think that business is also a charity. People sometimes think, oh no, business is there's business and then there's charity. No, business is also God's work in this world. But what are some of the other things that you like to get involved with, kind of outside of the boardroom? Even though you don't go to a boardroom,
that's exactly right. Now I tell you, I'm glad you asked that, because the first thing, when I went to Israel, as I said, I kind of had, to put it in some kind of phrase that somebody can understand, I kind of had a Ruth experience. And Hava and I decided that we would spend our whole life doing exactly what you talked about in Israel 365. If you thought he was crazy, 15 years ago, think of us 51 years ago. We came to the States. We would go to synagogue. We would go to churches. And these are people we knew. It wasn't like we were going to strangers who thought, well, these are just crazy young people. We went to people we knew. And of course, even though they knew us, they still thought we were crazy. But they said, you know what? On both sides, in churches and synagogue, I'll never forget a rabbi said, Jimmy, he said, listen, you got to make a choice. You can't, this work that you're trying to do of bringing, getting us together and kind of dialoguing and working together for the good of both communities. It's not going to work. I mean, we've got too much of a history. And so if you want to be on our side, you're welcome, be here every day. But if not, don't come. Well, in the church, it was very similar in the sense that they said, don't come here because you're influencing people. I said, well, that's exactly the point, is to influence people. No, but we don't want the people influenced. So what we've witnessed over 50 years, if you ask what I'm sinking my teeth in, that has been our focus in life more than business and making money. It's really, it's one of those things you can't take credit for. I wished I could take credit for saying, oh, I had this great idea of trying to bring the Jewish and the Christian communities together, because it was easy for me to see early on in those earliest days when I was still a teenager that we were headed in the same direction. I mean, we both believed in the final redemption. And it so interested me that, and it's mind boggled. How could we have separated and been apart for so long? But when when we started 50 years ago, slowly we would see things changing. And I would think, gosh, I'm seeing something, but it's like 30 years ahead of time. Then it got to be 20 years ahead of time. Then it got to be 15, 10, 5. And now I'm hearing people say things that I've been thinking. And I'm saying, I'm already, everything's caught up to me, or I'm behind everything else. But the world is changing. And if the Jewish audience and the Christian audience, I don't know who's your audience exactly, but if everybody could understand that there's so much more that we have in common that we can do for the good of Israel and the Jewish people and the future of the world together, I think what we're doing is the right thing. Hava and I have an organization called Ambassadors for Israel. I won't dwell on that, but that's what we spend. Uh, if I work full time with Ambassadors for Israel, I eat, sleep, drink, think, wake, sleep. That's what we do, is do this. And so we spend our time really doing that project, is trying to bring the community together. And we've had great success. The past couple of years, we've been raising money for lone soldiers, and we're involved in different organizations. I'm on boards, or I'm with, I don't know if you're familiar with the Hebrew Order of David, but it's a Jewish fraternity, actually the oldest one in the world. It was founded in the late 1800s. But it's a Jewish organization by invitation, and we're about to have a big event here in April with a famous movie personality who, after October 7th, really was awakened in her spirit to try to convince the Christian world. I think she's a Catholic, to convince the Christian world that, man, we need to be standing with Israel. So we're doing that personally. And
is this what's her name?
Patricia Heaton. Yes,
Heaton.
Everybody loves Raymond.
Yeah, everyone loves Raymond. Well, I think it's everyone loves Patricia.
Yeah,
I think that's really
right.
what this is.
That's right.
This has turned into, because she's been such an unbelievable moral clarity and focus and vision and nonstop energy. I mean, just it's really such a blessing to see somebody with that. So that's great that you guys are going to be able to host her.
Yeah, and I'll congratulate you, because Israel 365 in Dallas with Sharon, you guys are doing a great job. And here in this area, we kind of all work together. So we support her. She comes to our things. I mean, it's a great opportunity here for everybody to work together and to help each other.
Yeah, I mean that's what it comes down to. There are obviously significant differences in that, and those should not be minimized and to convert or to convince on either side. But there's so many areas of commonality, and so many areas where where we share those values of family, and we share those values of hard work and of country and of civility and respect, and you can go on and on and on. And yes, there definitely are some theological differences between Jews and Christians, and how we view law and how we view Jesus. And there's a lot of different things to discuss, but that shouldn't prevent us from finding those areas where, okay, these are areas that we can and should work together. I think we discussed it last time. Rabbi Eli has a book, The War Against the Bible. Yes. And, so whether we like it or not, we're also being pushed together, because you got radical Islam on one side, and you have woke leftists on the other. And, it's just the people that love the Bible that are stuck somewhere in the middle, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think that's unique things, especially within the non-Jewish community. They've never been faced with these issues like they are today. For the Jewish people, facing opposition is kind of in the DNA. It's like, well, that's who we are. Everywhere we go, somebody has a problem. There was, especially in America, the Christian community has been isolated. They really live in a bubble as far as that. But the two things that you mentioned, the woke and the radical Islam, has opened some eyes, not all, but that's what we're working on. But with God's help, it's, he's brought us till here. He's going to carry us to the culmination of whatever it is he has planned. And that's what's exciting for me. May I live until the coming of the Messiah, and may I see the redemption, and may I be in Israel when it happens. I'd rather be there than be here when that happens.
Better get your plane tickets now. They're going to be so expensive. And
I know. Well, man, I appreciate all of the organizations. I'll tell you something interesting. I had a meeting the other night with a gentleman who's a leader of one of the very, very large Christian congregations in Dallas. And I've known them for years, the leadership, not him, but the other leadership. And it was fascinating to listen to him because I had told in the past, Hava and I've been on we're the founding members of the board for the FIDF in our North Texas region of the country. And I remember being up in New York, and I told him, I said, listen, you guys, you're leaving a lot of potential contributions off the table by not reaching out to the non-Jewish Christian community. And they said, well, we don't want to get involved in the whole issue of religion or politics. So they avoided many things. But today they've changed that. And but today we're seeing even people in our own time sending us things that are so like breakthroughs. It's like, wait a minute, last year, this was your hard, fast position. This year, it's totally, you've flip-flopped 180 degrees. It's amazing. Our local senator here, who's a dear friend of ours and has spoken at 3 of our events in the last year, she sent us a text yesterday morning. She had gone to church and she sent a text of the notes, the sermon her pastor did. The whole sermon was why we should and must support Israel and the Jewish people. That was a Sunday morning sermon and I'm thinking it's wonderful. It's wonderful. Hey, and in ours, let's put it like this. For our business, it's good for business. Trying to change the world.
It is pretty amazing because I look at my life up until around 5 years ago, right before COVID, and the world has more or less kind of been pretty consistent. Okay, you had a 9/11, you had some major world events, but nothing that was so earth-shattering. And the last 5 years have like turned the whole soil over, and you have to rethink everything. You have to rethink your alliances, rethink your dedication, what organizations you're loyal to, what people, and even within religion, who are the people who are standing up, who are standing up for good and for doing the right thing. And I think it's just been, everything has to be kind of looked at anew because we're just in unprecedented times of history that is change, and we haven't seen anything yet. I mean, I think the next 5 years are going to be even more radical than the last 5 years have been.
Yeah, and that's exciting for me. I like a little bit of craziness. Get things stirred up good, and good results always come out of that. And again, you guys are doing a fantastic job, and I'm looking forward to getting to know all of you better. And I'm going to do a plug for you. You're having this big event here in Dallas, and that we're all excited about.
Yeah, no, it is going to be amazing. I'm not sure that this will end up being published before that, but we'll try and get it out. But yeah, I mean, there's just it's the tectonic plates of the world are shifting, and new things are happening, and new alliances, and we're going to see things that we've never seen before. The rabbi of my community actually pointed out. He said, one thing that war does, unfortunately, is unfortunately having war, but the result of war is changes that would have taken hundreds of years to change happen in really just a matter of months. I mean, take a look. Syria fell. If you look, World War I, every empire fell, right? And World War II is just kind of the remaining Japanese or whatever. And all of a sudden you have a new world order 4 or 5 years later. And I think that's really some of the times that we are going through.
No, it's interesting times.
Yeah, it's for sure. So what's the next big project for you? Meaning, I feel like there's something coming down the pike, and it's got to be you have your eye on something.
Yes, it is. Well, my son We have also, one thing I didn't mention, we've been involved in the precious metal and crypto business in the past. But the government, they were so hard on us, especially the crypto. I mean, the banks just basically said, you can't bank with us. I mean, they shut it all down. But today, and that was quite a nice business. And my son loves that stuff. He, all of that kind of the metal.
Printing money, who doesn't?
Well, yeah, but it's also interesting because, the beauty about crypto is people say, well, what is it? And all you can say is, we don't have a clue. We can't, there's no way to explain it. You either do it or you don't do it. You either throw something up in the wind or you don't. I mean, if you try to figure it out, it's not like anything else. But we kind of enjoy those things. And with our new president saying America's going to be the crypto capital of the world, we're going to get back involved into that. Although we've been doing it, but on a very low key with friends and family. But we're going to get back into that. We still have our nutritional supplement business. I still have some construction projects to finish. I've got everything ready to go vertical and start building the buildings. So we have a lot of things to do. I'm just trying to figure out how am I going to have time to do that and to do what we're doing for Israel. I enjoy the doing for Israel part much more. The other's fun, but to see what is happening, as you said, to realize that it's not anything anybody did. It's nobody can come up and take credit. Oh, if it wasn't for me, none of this would be happening. No. Forget all that. It's only a work of Hashem, and that's the way we have to view it.
Absolutely. It's really wild just to see these things, but God should bless you with the strength to get all these things done. A quote that I very much like comes from the late Shimon Peres, who said, if your dreams are greater than your accomplishments, then you are a young man. And if your accomplishments are greater than your dreams, you're a very old man. So you, Jimmy, are a very young man.
Yes,
you have much to accomplish.
I love it because all I have to do now is we just have to tell the Almighty, hey, you have to make sure this body will last long enough to get some accomplishments done.
Yeah, it's and that's what it is. One other teaching that I love is I heard from Richard Joel, who is the president of Yeshiva University. He said, "Why isn't that Moses wasn't allowed to come into the land of Israel? Just step over the Jordan and be done with it, and then he could rest there. Why was it only? Why was he not allowed in?" He said, "You know why? Because Moses was a leader. Moses was." Had he got into the land of Israel, you know what he would have done? He would have begged God, let me just put down one stone for the temple. Just one. And when I do that, then there's always going to be something new. There's no such thing as retirement. Retirement is a fiction of the American imagination, and it's something which there's no reason for it. Well, you take a little bit, okay, you go play golf once in a while, but no, you should be with that energy and with that strength on to the next thing. Who else can I help? What more can I do? And God should bless you with that strength to be able to do these great things.
I have is my dream, not putting the stone, although that could be a possibility also in our day. But the text, every man shall sit under his fig tree and his vine. So we just built this house. We've been here 2 years now. And outside, if you can see outside over here, there's 2 fig trees planted and 1 grapevine. So mine is okay, God, when I reach the accomplishment, I'll get to sit under my fig tree and my vine and
sit back and enjoy
good Israeli food.
Yeah, that's it. We'll get you some falafel, and you have some figs and some grapes. That's wonderful.
I'm known in all the restaurants that I've known, some of the famous ones that aren't existing anymore. I used to be known as Abu Schnitzel. They used to call me Abu Schnitzel. I'd go into a steak restaurant, donor would say, what do you want? I said, I want schnitzel. He says, we don't do schnitzel. But within 10 minutes, he sends somebody out. They bring back schnitzel for me. So,
okay. So they work it out.
yeah.
Amazing. Jimmy, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time. It's been a pleasure. And once again, God should just bless you with continued strength and continued health. And looking forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.
Yes, hopefully so. And thank you also, Rabbi. And I look forward to us continue building our relationship. And if you ever think there's something I can do to help you, please let me know.
A pleasure. Thank you.